What if the real reason your life feels stuck is not lack of talent, not lack of opportunity, but the simple fact that your mind does not listen to you? Think about that for a moment. How many times have you told yourself you would start today, only to delay it until tomorrow? How many times have you promised change, felt that surge of determination, and then watched it fade like it was never real? It is frustrating. It is confusing. And deep down, it creates a silent fear that maybe you are not in control of your own life. You give commands every day. Wake up early, focus, stop wasting time, do the work. But instead of instant action, there is hesitation. There is resistance. There is that quiet voice that pulls you away from what you know you should do. And slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to lose trust in yourself. Not in your dreams, not in your potential, but in your ability to follow through. This is the hidden struggle most people never talk about. It is not about knowing what to do. You already know. It is not about motivation either. You have felt motivated before. The real problem is deeper. Your mind has learned that it does not have to obey you. It has learned that your commands are suggestions, not orders, and once that happens, everything becomes harder. You start negotiating with yourself. You wait until you feel ready. You look for the perfect moment, but the truth is that moment never comes. Because your mind is now trained to choose comfort over command, ease over effort, distraction over discipline. And the longer this continues, the stronger that pattern becomes. But here is the truth that can change everything for you. Your mind is not your enemy. It is untrained. Just like a muscle that has never been used, it feels weak. Just like a skill that has never been practiced, it feels unnatural. But the moment you understand this, something powerful happens. You stop blaming yourself and you start taking control. Because if your mind can be trained to ignore you, it can also be trained to obey you. And when that shift begins, your entire life starts to change. Imagine waking up and actually doing what you said you would do. Imagine giving a command and feeling your body respond instantly, without doubt, without delay. Imagine no longer being controlled by mood, by laziness, by fear. That is not just discipline. That is freedom, the freedom to act when you decide, the freedom to move forward without resistance, the freedom to become the person you know you are capable of becoming. This is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming powerful. It is about building a level of inner authority where your thoughts no longer control you, you control them. And once you experience even a small moment of that control, you will never want to go back. Because in that moment, you realize something most people never do. You were never stuck. You were never incapable. You were simply untrained. And starting now, that changes. And once you see that clearly, you begin to notice something uncomfortable but powerful. Every time you hesitate, every time you delay, every time you choose comfort over action, you are not just avoiding effort. You are training your mind to ignore you. Your brain is always learning. It is always adapting. Not based on what you say, but based on what you do. You can repeat powerful words in your head all day, but if your actions do not match, your brain will follow the actions. It will build patterns around them. It will automate them. And over time, those patterns become your default behavior. This is why you feel stuck even when you want to change. Because your mind has been conditioned to expect delay. It has been trained to believe that your commands are optional. That when you say, "Start now," there is always room to wait. That when you say, "Stay focused," there is always room to drift. And the more you repeat this cycle, the stronger it becomes. It is not a lack of discipline, it is a loop. A psychological loop where intention is followed by hesitation, and hesitation is followed by inaction. And every time that loop completes, it reinforces itself. It tells your brain, "This is who I am, this is how I operate." But here is where everything begins to shift. If your brain can learn disobedience, it can learn obedience. That means you have the power to rewrite the pattern. Not in one big moment, not through sudden bursts of motivation, but through consistent proof. Small, undeniable proof that your commands matter. That when you say something, it happens. This is where most people go wrong. They wait for a big change, a perfect day, a surge of energy, but your mind does not change through big moments. It changes through repetition, through small wins that build trust over time. When you say, "Get up," and you actually get up, something changes. It may feel small, almost meaningless, but it is not. It is a signal to your brain that your words carry weight, that your decisions have authority. When you say, "Start now," and you move without hesitation, you are doing more than completing a task. You are rebuilding trust with yourself. You are showing your mind that there is no gap between decision and action, and that gap is everything, because that gap is where doubt lives. That gap is where excuses are created. That gap is where your energy gets drained before you even begin. The longer that gap exists, the weaker your control becomes, so you must close it. You must shorten the distance between thinking and doing until it almost disappears, until action becomes automatic, until your first instinct is not to question, not to delay, but to move. This will feel uncomfortable at first. Your mind will resist. It will try to slow you down. It will offer you reasons to wait, to think, to prepare more. But those are not logical thoughts. They are conditioned responses, and you do not need to fight them with emotion. You need to override them with action. Act before the doubt finishes forming. Move before the excuse is complete. Start before your mind has time to negotiate. This is how you break the loop, not by waiting to feel ready, but by proving again and again that readiness does not matter, that your command is enough. And the more you do this, the more your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who struggles to stay consistent. You start seeing yourself as someone who follows through, someone who acts, someone who does not wait for permission from their own mind. That is where real power begins, and when that shift begins, something inside you starts to harden in the best way possible. You stop treating your decisions like suggestions. You start treating them like commands. This is where true control is born. Not in thinking, not in planning, but in the moment you remove the space between decision and action. That space is dangerous. It is where your mind starts negotiating. It whispers things that sound reasonable. Wait a little longer. Start later. You need to feel ready first. And if you listen even once, it grows stronger. Not because it is right, but because you obeyed it. Every delay feeds it. Every hesitation strengthens it. So you must become faster than your own doubt. The moment you decide, you move, no pause, no second thought, no emotional check, just action. This is not about being aggressive. It is about being precise, clean, direct, like a switch turning on. Your mind will not like this at first. It will try to slow you down. It will try to create friction. That is expected, because you are breaking a pattern that has been repeated for years. But understand this clearly, resistance is not a sign to stop. It is proof that you are doing something right. Most people feel resistance and retreat. You must feel resistance and advance. When you feel that pull to delay, that is your signal. That is your moment, not later, not after thinking more. Right there, you move, you act, you execute. And at first it will feel unnatural, almost forced. But that is exactly how training works. No skill feels natural in the beginning. No discipline feels easy at the start. But repetition changes everything. Each time you act instantly, you are carving a new pathway in your mind. You are teaching your brain a new rule. When a command is given, we respond, immediately, without discussion. And slowly something powerful begins to happen. The hesitation gets weaker. The excuses become quieter. The delay starts to disappear. Not completely, but enough for you to notice a difference. Enough for you to feel a shift in your control. You stop relying on motivation. Because you realize something deeper. You realize that action creates motivation, not the other way around. That clarity comes from movement, not from waiting. And once you experience that, even once, it changes your perspective. You no longer wait to feel inspired. You create momentum by starting. You no longer need the perfect mood. You build discipline by acting in imperfect conditions. This is the mindset of someone who commands their mind. You do not ask yourself if you feel like it. You do not give yourself options. You give yourself direction, clear, simple, immediate, move, start, do it now, and you follow through, because every time you do, you are not just completing a task. You are reinforcing your authority. You are proving to yourself that your words have power, that your decisions mean something, and that proof is everything. Because confidence is not built by thinking positive thoughts. It is built by evidence, by showing yourself again and again that you can trust your own command, that when you decide, you act. And once that belief takes root, it becomes unshakable. You stop seeing yourself as someone who struggles. You start seeing yourself as someone who executes. And that identity changes everything. And as that identity begins to take shape, you start to understand something most people completely overlook. Power is not built in big, dramatic moments. It is built in the quiet, ordinary decisions that no one else sees. The way you respond to the smallest commands is shaping the strongest version of you. When you say you will wake up at a certain time, that moment matters. When you decide to start a task, that moment matters. When you feel the urge to stop, to delay, to distract yourself, and you choose to continue anyway, that moment matters even more. Because your mind is watching, it is recording. It is learning who you are through what you repeatedly do. You cannot separate the small from the big. Your brain does not work like that. It does not say, this action is important, I will learn from it, and this one is not. It simply builds patterns, and those patterns become your default behavior. So if you ignore your own commands in small things, you will struggle in big things. If you hesitate in easy moments, you will freeze in difficult ones. But if you train yourself to act instantly in simple situations, you build the strength to act under pressure. This is where real discipline is formed, not in intensity, but in consistency. Not in doing everything perfectly, but in refusing to break your word to yourself, even in the smallest ways. Because every time you follow through, you are reinforcing a message. I do what I say. And the more you repeat that message, the deeper it sinks into your identity. At first, it feels like effort. You have to remind yourself, you have to push yourself. But over time, it becomes automatic. It becomes who you are. You no longer debate whether to act. You simply act. And this creates a level of inner stability that most people never experience. You stop being controlled by your emotions, because your actions are no longer dependent on how you feel. You stop being distracted by every impulse. Because your focus is guided by decision, not desire. This is what it means to have control over your mind. It is not about silencing every thought. It is not about eliminating every distraction. It is about choosing your response again and again until that choice becomes natural. And there is something deeply powerful about that. Because once you trust yourself, truly trust yourself, everything changes. You stop overthinking. You stop doubting your ability to follow through. You stop needing external motivation, validation, or pressure. You become self-directed, and that is rare. Most people spend their lives waiting for something outside of them to push them forward. A deadline, a consequence, a burst of inspiration. But you no longer need that. You have built something stronger. You have built internal command, and with that comes a quiet confidence. Not loud, not showy, but unshakable. The kind of confidence that comes from knowing that when you decide something, it gets done. No matter what. That is the difference between wishing and executing. Between dreaming and becoming. Between staying where you are and moving toward the life you know you are capable of creating. And it all comes down to one thing. Honoring your own commands, no matter how small they seem. And the moment you begin to honor your own commands consistently, you come face to face with one of the most dangerous enemies you have ever carried, hesitation. It does not shout, it does not force you to stop. It simply whispers, wait. Just a second, just a small delay. It feels harmless, almost logical. But that small pause is where everything starts to break. Because hesitation is not just a moment, it is a habit, a pattern that slowly weakens your authority from the inside. Every time you hesitate, you create space for doubt to grow. You give your mind time to question your decision, to search for easier options, to justify an action. And once that process begins, it becomes harder to stop. One thought leads to another. One excuse builds on the next, and before you realize it, the moment is gone. Action disappears and regret takes its place. But here is what most people never understand. Hesitation is not something you eliminate. It is something you override. You will feel it. You will hear that voice. You will experience that pull to delay. That does not mean you are weak. That means you are human. The difference is in how you respond. The moment hesitation appears, that is your trigger. Not to stop, but to move faster. Not to think more, but to act immediately. You must train yourself to recognize that feeling as a signal. A clear, undeniable sign that it is time to act without delay. Because if you wait, even for a few seconds, hesitation gains control. But if you move instantly, it loses its power. This is where discipline becomes sharp, focused, unbreakable. You shorten your decision window. You remove the luxury of overthinking. You do not give yourself time to negotiate. You decide and you act, clean and direct, and something powerful begins to happen when you practice this. Your mind starts adapting to your speed. It stops expecting delay. It stops preparing excuses, because it learns that there is no time for that anymore. The moment a command is given, execution follows. That becomes the new pattern. But to reach that point, you must also remove the traps that feed hesitation. Too many choices, too much uncertainty, too many unclear decisions. These create confusion, and confusion creates delay. So you simplify, you make your commands clear and direct. Not "I will try," not "maybe later," but "I do this now." No room for interpretation, no space for doubt. Clarity cuts through hesitation. And once your actions become clear, your mind has less resistance. It knows exactly what is expected. And when expectations are simple, execution becomes easier. But the deepest shift happens when you stop seeing hesitation as something negative. You start seeing it as an opportunity to prove control, to reinforce your authority, to strengthen your discipline in real time. Because every time you feel that resistance and act anyway, you are building something powerful, something most people never develop. You are building dominance over your own mind, not through force but through consistency, not through emotion but through action. And over time, hesitation begins to lose its influence. It still appears, but it no longer controls you. It becomes weaker, quieter, less convincing. Until one day you notice something different. You no longer pause like you used to. You no longer overthink simple decisions. You no longer feel stuck in the same patterns. You move quickly, decisively, without unnecessary delay. And in that movement, you discover a new level of freedom. And that freedom begins to reshape the way you see yourself at the deepest level. You are no longer someone who hopes to change. You are someone who acts. You are no longer waiting for the right moment. You are creating it through your decisions. And with every command you follow, your identity becomes stronger, sharper, more defined. Because in the end, this is not just about discipline. It is about who you become when no one is watching. When there is no pressure, no deadline, no reward waiting on the other side, what do? Do you still follow through? Do you still act with the same level of control? Or do you fall back into old patterns the moment no one is there to see it? That answer defines everything. Because real power is not external, it is internal. It is the ability to give yourself an order and execute it without needing validation, without needing urgency, without needing anything outside of you to force it. And that kind of power is rare. Most people rely on emotion. When they feel good, they act. When they feel tired, they stop. When they feel inspired, they move. When they feel doubt, they freeze. Their entire life is controlled by temporary states. But you are building something different. You are building a system where action is not dependent on feeling. Where your standards stay the same, regardless of your mood. Where your decisions are followed, not questioned. This is what creates consistency, and consistency is what creates transformation. Not overnight, not in one dramatic shift, but through repeated proof. Through moments where you choose discipline over comfort, even when it is inconvenient, especially when it is inconvenient. Because that is where your identity is tested. Anyone can act when it is easy. Anyone can follow through when they feel motivated. But when it is difficult, when it is uncomfortable, when every part of you wants to delay, and you act anyway, that is where you separate yourself. That is where you become someone different. You begin to trust yourself in a way you never have before. Not because you think you are capable, but because you have evidence. You have shown yourself again and again that you do not break your word. And that trust becomes unshakable. It removes doubt. It removes hesitation. It removes the constant battle between what you want to do and what you actually do. Because now those two things are aligned. You decide and you act. There is no gap, no delay. No internal argument. And once you reach that level, your life changes in a way that is impossible to ignore. You become more focused, more productive. More in control of your time, your energy, your direction. You stop reacting to circumstances and start shaping them. You stop feeling stuck because you are always moving. And it all comes down to a simple, powerful truth. Your mind will obey you, but only after you prove that your commands are not optional. So in this moment right now, you have a choice. You can continue negotiating with yourself, delaying, waiting, repeating the same patterns, or you can decide that from this point forward, when you give a command, you follow it. Immediately. without hesitation, without excuse. And that decision, if you truly commit to it, will change everything. And if you are honest with yourself, you can feel it right now. That quiet tension between who you are and who you know you could become. That space where your potential is waiting, but your habits keep pulling you back. This is the final line you must cross. Not in the future, not someday, but now. Because everything you have heard means nothing without a decision. A real decision. Not a temporary burst of motivation, not a passing thought, but a clear internal command that you refuse to break. The kind of decision that does not depend on how you feel tomorrow or what happens next week. The kind of decision that becomes a standard. From this moment forward, your words must carry weight. When you tell yourself to move, you move. When you say start, you start. When you commit, you follow through. No negotiation, no delay, no exceptions hidden behind excuses. This is where your identity locks in. Understand this deeply. Your mind is always watching for consistency. It is always asking one question: are your commands real or are they optional? And the answer is not given through intention. It is given through action. Every time you hesitate, you weaken that answer. Every time you act instantly, you strengthen it. So your focus becomes simple, not easy but simple. You remove the gap. You eliminate the pause. You stop giving your mind time to escape your command. Because that gap has been your greatest weakness, and closing it becomes your greatest strength. There will be moments when it feels uncomfortable, moments when your body resists, moments when your thoughts try to slow you down, but those moments are not obstacles, they are opportunities. Opportunities to reinforce who you are becoming. Because in those exact moments you are writing your identity in real time, not through words, not through plans, but through action. And the more you act in alignment with your decisions, the more something powerful begins to take over. Your behavior becomes automatic. Your focus becomes sharper. Your discipline becomes natural. You stop forcing yourself to do things. You simply do them. That is when control becomes effortless, not because it is easy, but because it is ingrained. Because your mind no longer questions your commands. It trusts them. It follows them. It responds without resistance. And when you reach that point, you realize something that changes everything. You were never lacking motivation. You were lacking authority. And now you have built it, not in theory, not in words, but in action. Repeated, consistent, undeniable action that has reshaped the way your mind responds. This is what separates those who stay stuck from those who rise. It is not talent. It is not luck. It is the ability to command yourself and follow through instantly. So now the only thing that matters is what you do next. Not tomorrow, not later, right now. There is something you know you should be doing, something you have been delaying, something your mind has been avoiding. This is your moment. Give the command and then move. Immediately. No hesitation, no excuse, no second thought, because this is where everything changes.